It's essentially just like a cosmic fart that enters your lungs,
Yeah.
and then it takes over your whole body, and it makes you vomit and shit out all the blood that's in your body. And then now the little alien lives inside of you and is just there for the ride. I just wanted to paint a picture. I'm sorry.
Cosmic fart. That is a picture painted for sure. Hey guys, welcome to the Video Express, where we dust off old VHS tapes and discuss all things horror, sci-fi, and exploitation. I'm Matt.
And I'm Katie.
Katie, let's get things rolling. Tell our fine listeners what movie we are spotlighting on tonight's show.
Tonight we are talking about Bloodsuckers from Outer Space. So yeah, Matt, you want to tell us a little bit more about the movie?
An evil, invisible alien force turns locals from a Texas town into blood-sucking zombies in this 1984 horror comedy written, directed, and acted by Glenn Coburn. But before we move along and talk about this amazing fucking movie, Katie, why don't we talk about what's going on in the cinema world today?
All right. Well, first up, we have a birthday today. Today, the episode is being released on March 24th. So today, we are celebrating the birthday of the late, great R. Lee Ermey, also known as the absolutely terrifying sheriff from the Texas Chainsaw remake. Again, he is sadly no longer with us, but his performance in that movie scared the hell out of me and is legendary. So he deserves to have one poured out for him today.
100% a true legend.
Yes. And then this one's just kind of funny. So anybody that knows me and the longer that, we do this show, it's going to become pretty apparent that I have a particular affinity for the 2000s era of horror for some reason. In all of its glossy, overproduced ridiculousness. So today I would love to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the 2006 classic Stay Alive, starring Frankie Muniz, about a video game that kills you, and if you die in the game, you die for real. So
I
yep,
can
that's a silly one for me.
I can full-heartedly 100% say I have never seen that movie, and I don't even know if I've heard of it, to be 100% honest with you.
What? This was a favorite of mine in high school. It came out, I mean, I think it had a really brief theatrical run and it mostly got totally dunked on and was a flop. But I've noticed that a lot of people who like are around my age now are like it's having like a renaissance of being like, oh my god, Stay Alive, that movie. So I don't know, it's not good, but it's pretty funny. So if you also like 2000s horror and you want to see some wacky early attempts at CG, then Stay Alive is the movie for you.
Two things. One is I had no idea that Frankie Muniz was in a horror movie. So that's like, again, I can't
Yes.
recall this movie, but most of all, I had no idea that Malcolm in the Middle was in a horror flick. Second, you say early 2000s attempts at CG. Are we talking like The Rock from the Mummy Part 2 Scorpion King bad CG, or American Werewolf in Paris CG?
It's not as bad as like the Scorpion King, and to be fair, a lot of the CG is just them trying to recreate what these filmmakers think video games look
I
like.
gotcha. Okay.
So it's just like fake video game CG. But yeah, so Frankie Muniz isn't the main character like at all. He's like just a kind of a funny side character in this group, but he's like the only person I can even remember. I think Sophia Bush is in it, who was like a pretty popular actress in the 2000s. But that's the only people I can
She
remember
was
from
like a
that.
blip on the radar, like, but from like 2000 and like 2003 to like 2006. The only like
Yeah, I think One Tree Hill was her
yeah,
thing.
One Tree Hill, and then the only thing I can really remember her in, as far as horror films, she was the lead in the Hitcher remake.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that movie. Yep, yep, yep. Okay, so then I have a movie recommendation as well. So that's it for birthdays and anniversaries. So okay, another thing about me is that when I'm actively watching a horror movie, specifically one that has to do with like the paranormal, I'm a huge scaredy cat. Like I hate jump scares. Hide behind my eyes, like I yell at the TV, like I'm a huge baby about it. But rarely rarely does a horror movie come along that actually like leaves me shooketh. Like like it freaks me out after I turn the TV off. And I mean, I can't remember. It's been something like that only comes along for me every few years. And so I recently watched a movie that by the time this episode comes out, this movie will be on Shudder. I think it dropped February 25th, and it's called The Dark and the Wicked. And holy shit, Matt, this movie scared the hell out of me. I've never like I felt like the way I felt when I was 14 and my dad brought me to see the Grudge remake it at the little pink theater in the small town that you live in currently, and there was nobody else in the theater, and I spent the whole time hiding under my dad's jacket, absolutely terrified. So like it's been a long time since I felt that while watching a movie, and this movie, I don't know what it is, but something did it for me. So I highly recommend you check it out. Anybody listening, definitely check it out. Like it's I don't want to give too much away because that would just spoil everything. But basically, there's an old man. He is dying, and his kids come to visit him to be with him as he's dying. And then quickly, it becomes apparent that there's an evil presence on the property. Like they live on this big ranch out in the middle of nowhere, and it's fucked up, man.
It was The Dark and the Wicked.
Yeah, the dark and the wicked.
No, I'll have to check it out. And I can actually vouch
Mm-hmm.
100% what you said. For folks listening at home that do not know either one of us, or that doesn't know Katie, 100% I can vouch that this girl, as long as I have known her, has been, for whatever reason, terrified of fucking The Grudge. Because
Yeah, I don't know why.
I remember like me like teasing you, like sending you pictures of whatever the fuck her name is, the white pasty looking
Yeah,
with
yeah.
long hair. Yeah,
The white-faced,
yeah.
crazy croaking lady, yeah. Yeah, something about I don't know, I think I just hadn't seen a movie with, like, especially disturbing imagery like that, and it just hit me at, like, the perfect age that it just messed with me, man. I don't know, I grew up being really afraid of ghosts. And I think in The Grudge, they break the like one holy rule that I had, which is that under the covers I am safe.
Right.
And so I couldn't trust anything after that. But anyway, the only other little shout out like recommendation I wanted to give now is just a shout out. I think we've mentioned them before in another episode, but just wanted to shout out Vinegar Syndrome for the Bloodsuckers
Yeah.
Blu-ray that I watched for this show. They scanned it from the actual 16 millimeter negatives and then remastered it in 2K, so it just looks like leaps and bounds beyond what it had looked like for most of its life. And it has a really cool making of documentary and a lot of info. Like it's really hard to find information about this movie online, so I was just really happy that that they had this making of documentary on there.
Yeah, I too own the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray. Shocker, I did not watch this one on VHS. But yeah, I've got the Blu-ray as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sell out.
Yeah, I know. But you're right. It looks amazing. Like it still captures that grainy 16 millimeter film look, but it's just so much clearer. I mean, like you still feel like you're watching a movie on
Yeah.
VHS, but just with clarity.
Yeah.
All right, what we got anything else?
Nope, that's it for me. No more no more recommendations here. So yeah, just wanted to shout out Vinegar Syndrome one more time before we dive into this movie.
Awesome. All right, well, Bloodsuckers from Outer Space, which premiered at the Joe Bob Briggs Drive-In Festival in October of 1984 in Texas. Katie, this is it. This is the moment. Tell me and the listeners what you thought of Bloodsuckers from Outer Space.
Well, I had a really good time watching it, I'll say that, and I think finding out like, hearing the story of how it was made, which I'll get into that more we'll get into that more later, I have some thoughts about that too, but that just endeared it to me even more. So, I have 2 ways that I would like to describe this movie, and the first one is that it reminds me of it's like the movie that wins Best Picture in the really tiny small town film festival where, like, they just win because it's like you made a movie that's passable. Congratulations. Um, so that's one way that I'll describe it. And trust me, I've been to a few of similar film festivals, and it definitely felt familiar to watch this movie. But also, it's kind of cool. Like it's written pretty, like it's got a pretty clever script. Like I think like the dialogue itself is pretty funny. It's just they had really like the experiences of the actors were pretty different. Like some were actual actors and some people weren't like at all. So the delivery of those funny lines sometimes gets lost.
Right.
But overall, this is kind of like if in it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets like Redneck Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that. Um, okay.
Yeah. So
So
I mean,
this might
I would say overall I liked it. Overall I liked it, but I it's not necessarily like a quote unquote good movie. So that just keep that in mind.
all right. So I think this might be the one because I've been saying I couldn't wait to do a show where we watch a movie where we might finally differ a little bit. I had no idea how you were going to feel about this movie, and that's
Oh.
yeah. And I without an ounce of joking, love, love this fucking movie. Like, I love this movie with a fucking passion, and this might be the one and only movie we might do more in the future, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. But for right now, this is the only movie that I can think of that we'll be doing that is not a movie that I have seen, like 100 times, and B, that I have owned for, like, a long time on VHS. As a matter of fact, I
Mhm.
just saw this movie for the first time, about 2 years ago, and, I
Oh, wow.
yes, so the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia, of course, I'm part of their, Psycho Cinema film group where they're always showing really cool horror movies, and, they were doing I think it was, like, maybe, like, a video vortex showing or whatever, which is usually, like, some, like, rare usually shot on video type stuff, but I just happened, they said they were showing this movie, Bloodsuckers from Outer Space. I knew nothing of it. I watched the trailer and my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, okay, I've got to go see this. And I shit you not, I sounded like a fucking buffoon in that theater because I was cracking up so hard and so loud throughout that entire fucking movie. And I just instantly fell in love with it. And usually after those movies at Psycho Cinema, afterwards, like, people hang out and stuff like that. And Faye, who is the person that like is like our leader, our like who runs the film, Psycho Cinema. Usually I'll chat with her after the movie. And after the movie, I was telling her like how much I fucking love this movie, and she just reaches in her purse and yanks out the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray, steel sealed, and she was like, "Yeah, whenever Alamo does these events, usually the distributor will send us goodies and stuff like that. They sent us a copy of the movie." And she's like, already own it. Here you go. And I was like, it was like handing me a piece of fucking gold because I
Oh, man, amazing.
genuinely love this movie. But here's the funny part. I don't know if you know this about me, but I actually hate horror comedies. I Usually,
Whoa.
yes. So I usually just despise horror comedies because to me they're usually A, not funny, or B, they don't know the perfect mix of horror and comedy. Like horror, the horror aspect should never be used as a
Mhm.
crutch. Like it should be like meshed well. Because in my eyes, the perfect horror comedy, the greatest one of all time and will never be topped, is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And what made that movie work,
That movie's awesome.
yeah. What was so great about it though is the fact that the horror aspect, the monsters were treated straight-faced, serious, and with respect. And the Abbott and Costello bits were treated like they were, like they're a comedy duo and doing their skits, and but they were married together perfectly. That the seriousness of the monsters just elevated the
Yeah.
comedy of the duo. And you, like I said, other horror comedies just fall flat for me. So this one hit all the right chords because it's not like it's like just a goofy fucking comedy. And like the dialogue and the
Yeah.
line deliveries and the fourth wall breaking just fucking gets me. And if you can break the fourth wall and get me to fucking cackle out loud in the movie theater, you're doing something right.
Honestly, the more I watched it, like, the longer I got into the movie itself, and subsequently, like, the more I've looked up, like, read stuff about it, the more that it's just so endearing to me. So, like, it definitely is, like, genuinely fucking hilarious. And, like, I think the problem with horror comedy and why it feels like, because I'm with you a little bit. Like, I do like horror comedy. I feel like I like the idea of horror comedy more than most things. Like, one of my favorite horror comedies is probably Cabin in the Woods, but most other horror comedies kind of just like miss the mark for me. And I feel like it's because they're all trying to do this like self-aware meta make fun of the horror genre thing,
Right.
whereas like Bloodsuckers from Outer Space is like a sci-fi horror movie that they just put comedic things in. Like it's just genuinely funny. They're not
Right.
trying, even if they are in some ways like doing a parody. I don't know how to say words. Making fun of making fun of like classic B movies. I swear I haven't had a single drop to drink today. Um, and you know, they might be making fun of these older movies, but it doesn't feel tired. It like feels like they don't lean, like you said, they don't use the horror as a crutch. Like it's very much like a gory, goopy, like kind of freaky if you think about the concept too much, like sci-fi horror, like body invasion movie, and then they just have these like ridiculous lines like "You cut my fucking arm off."
Oh, dude, that might be like that's definitely a laugh out loud moment for
That's
me.
the best.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
the uncle, Uncle Joe, I wrote down with, with the chainsaw and everything, like, this movie just, like, again, it just hits me on every fucking beat. I love it.
Yeah.
Even, like, where it falls flat, like, in the acting, like, because I would say 97% of this movie is people that's never done anything since or prior. But
Oh, yeah.
even that is so
Oh,
endearing
yeah.
because they're bad, but it just makes it that much more comical.
Yeah, so I think in one of our first episodes, I remember saying something to the effect of like the horror community is very forgiving in that if we can tell that you had a good time making the thing, we'll be a little lenient on the quality. And this is the like quintessential example of like technically it does some things that some would consider to be a bad movie, but it does it in such a genuine, like, an endearing way, and I you can just tell that everybody's having a fucking blast, that it makes it much more likable.
So, speaking of quality and the type of film it is, I'm really glad you brought that up because this this really showcases the type of fan that I am and like what I deem good. And I've said a million times before in past episodes, like I like terrible movies. So let's not get it twisted. I'm not a cinema snob by any means. But this movie, Bloodsuckers from Outer Space, you know how like you compare like perfect wines with cheese and shit like that. I feel like this movie
Yeah.
would be paired perfectly with another one of my favorite schlocky 80s zombie flicks, which is called The Dead Next Door, and another flick called
Okay.
yeah, another 80s flick called Flesh Eater, which was filmed by the late Bill Hinsman, who was the cemetery zombie in the original Night of the Living Dead. But anyway, those three films, they are the same, whereas it's like a super shoestring budget. They were shot in the hometown that the filmmakers were from. It's all got that like hometown aesthetic where it just looks like somebody's backyard, but all of that like mixed together is like the type of shit that I for some reason eat up. And I think it's because it feels I don't know, this might sound weird, but it feels real. And that I don't mean like real life, but it just feels like
I was just gonna say
like
that.
genuine. It feels just genuine, I guess is the
Yeah.
best word I can think of.
Yeah, it feels like people making a movie because they just wanted to make a movie. They're not like, we're going to get famous. We're going to make all this money. Like, they knew they weren't going to make any money. They knew that they weren't going to get famous. I mean, maybe they got a little hopeful with some of the names in this movie, and the fact that it like premiered at Joe Bob's Film Festival is pretty cool. But like, I don't think there were any delusions of grandeur here. They just were like, specifically like the director was like, we just got out of film school, like, and we're still friends, like, I want to make a movie, let's make a movie. And then they just did it, and that to me is really inspiring. Like, I
Absolutely.
just love anybody that just pursues their passion or pursues like making art, even if they know that like it's super niche and only a small number of people are going to like it that's why this has endured. That's why it's like 35 years later and anybody is still talking about it. Like, the fact that Vinegar Syndrome did like a reprint of it is, it's got to be amazing for the filmmakers themselves to be like, what, this random movie I made right out of college is like still getting talked about? Like, that's wild. So that makes me really happy about it. So that's why I would ultimately say I like this movie even if we disagree on the reasons why.
Yeah, honestly, and again, this is just for me. The worst thing about this movie is that I just did not see it sooner, because had this
Yeah.
had this been hanging on the shelf at the actual Video Express store when I was a kid renting movies, I would be championing this movie for a long time. But here we are now, so I'm fine with that. Tell me tell me what you thought of, let's get into the cast a little bit. Tell me what you thought
Yeah.
of, our main character, Tom Myers as Jeff Rose.
Okay. Yeah, so I he's probably one, I mean, he for sure was one of the only like actual like working actors that were a part of this movie. And I would say out of everybody, like he does a pretty good job. Like, he kind of leads this film well, I think. And just as a character, like, I don't know, it's pretty funny. Like, everything that happens to him is just funny. Like, he's like a photojournalist. He shows up to investigate a murder or like a mysterious death, and then all this weird shit starts happening, and then he just gets to have the best day of his life where he meets the hottest girl ever just driving down the side of the road, and then she's like, "Hey, guess what? I got some nitrous. Do you want to get high?" And then they just get high and have crazy sex, and then they fight a bunch of zombies and save the world. So like, what could be a better day, truly?
What like, everything you just said is exactly why I love this fucking movie, because that is a wonderful fucking that was pitch perfect. Dude Dude
Yeah.
gets in a Camaro with a hot '80s babe, huffs some nitrous, and goes on a journey fighting alien zombies, and decapitates decapitates a redneck with a chainsaw. Like, what is not to love?
And
What is not to love?
yeah, and they even and again, I'll keep harping on the fact that I do really think this script was pretty clever. Like they even took the time to like try and give him a little character development. You know, they introduced that he, his I believe it's his uncle. Like he's an orphan
Uncle
and he
Joe,
lives
yep.
with his aunt and uncle on a farm. Yeah, and Uncle Joe really wants Jeff to take over the family business and be a farmer. And he's like, "No, Dad, no, Uncle, I want to be a photojournalist or whatever." And so he's kind of given him this like ultimatum. And so you kind of see already there's like this struggle of like, what is he going to do? But then it's great because that never gets resolved because they just get turned into like zombie aliens, and he gets chainsawed. So
So fucking hilarious.
it's so
But,
good.
it's like I said, I just watched this I watched this for the first time 2 years ago, and then I watched it again. I've watched it 3 times now. I saw it first time 2 years ago. I watched it I had it on my October calendar this year for Halloween, and then I watched it again, actually today. And I it didn't hit me, I guess, until today because, today I'm taking notes. The other 2 times I'm drinking and fucking having a blast.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't have a blast this time, but this time I'm really paying attention to, like, more intricate shit, while I'm taking the notes,
Hmm.
and, that sounded funny, taking the notes. But anyway, um, how weird is it? Maybe I'm in the minority here, but how weird is it this movie was made, I guess technically it was made in '83,
Hmm.
released in '84, I'm assuming. But how weird is it that a movie that's, like, 37 years old, there is so many fucking parallels to today's world and this fucking movie.
I
I just
didn't
wanna
fully
give
catch that. I'd love to hear your take on that.
okay. So I don't the my one of my biggest rules about us doing this show is we should never get political,
Of course.
because I don't wanna ostracize anybody, and I want people to be able to listen to our show and enjoy the show for what it is.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna get political. I don't wanna choose any kind of side or whatever. I just wanna point out certain things in this movie that really stuck out to me, and I was like, "Holy shit, like, this is almost, like, relates to so much shit nowadays." So, like, just a depiction of the president, which, I mean, you can say that about any president almost, but the thing that really hit home was, the racism and the
Yeah.
homophobic stuff. And I really wanna, like I really wanna, like, applaud the Glenn Coburn, the director and everything, because this is a horror comedy and everything is meant to be schlocky with a shtick and, poking fun and just having a blast. And use they have a character, and I think more than one, that is homophobic and
Oh,
racist,
yeah.
and he's calling people, like, homos,
And just
and
saying all
he's
types of
using, like,
slurs and
the
shit.
N word,
Oh god.
but, like but they literally, like, are making this guy a fucking straight up caricature of what a race this is. Like, this
Oh,
dude is,
yeah.
like, got on, like, this, like, hillbilly, like, flap hat with, like, his bib overalls, and, like, they just really amp up, like, a caricature of a redneck, a racist redneck.
Yeah.
And when he calls them like homos, stuff like that, and he walks away, they're literally like, "Forget that guy. He's stupid." Like, but it's like they're literally like, I don't know. It's maybe
I love
I'm
that.
reaching here, but they're like, yeah, they're like condemning this people talking like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is 1984 and a small town redneck Texas made horror flick, and I'm like, wow, this is usually in '80s horror films when somebody is slinging, like, the word homo, like, it's not used as, like, a joke, like, that's how those motherfuckers talked
Yeah.
back then, and that's how it was, but in this movie, when that word is slung, they're like, "That's wrong," and I was like, "That's pretty fucking awesome."
Yeah, I really liked that too because I feel like there is definitely a stereotype of the type of people that are in Texas and just the type of people that live in the South in general. And I'm from the South. I'm from Virginia, and I also lived for a bit in Texas. So I can say that there definitely are still, unfortunately, people in this world like that ridiculous caricature of a character who do think those things. But I really appreciated that in this movie, especially in the 80s, they showed that, like, no, like these people in the home in this hometown that you might look at and assume a bunch about, like, they're gonna call it out and be like, no dude, that's not okay to talk like that, like, you're an idiot, get out of here. So I did
Yeah.
appreciate that. It felt a little like, it felt satirical. It's like, instead of using the offensive joke as just a punchline and like for shock value, they're like using it and then calling it out at the same time, which I appreciated.
Right. They could have gone the Family Guy route and just
Yeah.
used that as, like you said, as a punchline. But no, like, they actually made the punchline a punchline. Like, they made the redneck who's saying those slurs, which those slurs would normally be the punchline, but no, they made the guy who's saying those lines the punchline. Like, he's actually the fucking joke, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, I liked that a lot too. And I couldn't help but wonder. I don't know much about Glenn Coburn, like, on a personal level, but I got the feeling that the whole exchange with, like, with Jeff and his aunt and uncle, like, talking about like giving up your aspirations and joining the farm. Like, I don't know. I got the feeling that he had experienced something like that in his life because he did go to film school. Which,
Oh, I'm sure.
anytime you go to college to major in the arts, I can say from experience that's a fun conversation with the family. So so I felt,
Oh,
I empathize
I'm
there a little
sure.
bit.
Yeah, I'm sure that was written straight from the heart, when he was putting that script together.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we talked about our main character, Jeff Rhodes. I would say he's likable. He's there's nothing that really I think personally like stands out,
Yeah.
but I think he's just a good, like, main guy.
Yeah.
Let's move on to, I guess, quote unquote love interest. Julie, who is your, like, cute girl next door 80s babe with her puffy vest and her fucking Camaro. What do you
Yeah.
think about Julie, who was played by I guess Laura Ellis, who's never done anything since?
Yeah, she's not done anything since she was briefly interviewed for this making of doc. So that's like the only other thing on her IMDb. But as a character, I mean, I really liked her. She has a great look. Like you've mentioned, and like I've already said, like, yeah, she looked great. Um, she's not the best actor, which is probably why her IMDb is so light. But that doesn't really ruin it for me because I still think everything she says is so funny. Like, she's like, "You saved the
Yes.
world." Or like she has some line about, "I can't take another kung fu scene" or something. And she
I
just,
loved
they
that,
give her these
yes.
great lines, and she has like really funny facial expressions and like reactions. Like, she has a really animated face, I feel like. So
Very animated.
I think she did a good job, especially considering that she is not a professional actor. So I think she definitely like was able to deliver the comedy in a way that was effective.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, how the people in this movie that were not actors, I feel like their quote unquote amateur, what they brought to the table that was they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, actually elevated what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because, like, her not being an actual actress and not being a good actress really made some of the shit even funnier and, again, endearing.
Yeah.
Um, again, like, I'm going to basically gush over everything we talk about this entire episode. So I'm probably gonna, like, when we start, every character we're talking about, I'm not gonna say a whole lot because it's going to be redundant after a while. I'm just gonna keep gushing over everything because I love, love, love basically like 99% of this movie. I absolutely love.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I love Julie. I thought she was a great character. Like you said, very animated facial expressions, which I love.
Mhm.
Another thing that I actually love about her is parts of her character are similar to a male character that you would normally see in an 80s horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, she's the one that's initiating, "Well, come on, let's do the drugs." You know?
Yeah.
Like, she's the one, like, I've got the nitrous in the back seat. She's the one that instigates, like, "Let's go fuck." She's the one driving around in the badass Camaro. Like, I love that she, in a lot of ways, is the more straight, manly character. Not that she's manly, but just
Yeah.
her character is the more of, like, the gung ho type. Now, of course, that swings back and forth between her and Jeff throughout the movie, but there's certain beats where, like, she's the typical, like, dude bro in a way.
Yeah, I really like that too. And I mean, I just think you kind of already mentioned it, but I just can't get over and I just want to paint a picture for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, and there's hard to find pictures online of this too. But like this girl rolls up in her Camaro. She literally looks like a sorority girl. Like she's got perfectly like styled long brunette hair, like it's like big curly hair. She's got this like puffy vest on. I don't even remember what else she's wearing, but she's got a very like kind of normal, sweet, like I'm just going to sorority meeting like outfit. And then he gets in the car and she's like, I have a tank of nitrous in the back. You want to get high? And that is just the funniest thing in the world to me, that she is just rolling around with a whole ass tank of anesthesia. Which I also meant to bring
I
this up
love
when
it,
we were
I
talking
love it.
about Jeff, but since we're talking about her and it's also the nitrous, like the funniest fucking thing in the whole world about this movie is that they find out in the last like 5 minutes that the nitrous is what neutralizes the life force. So like they're literally sitting in the car like huffing nitrous, or actually no, they're not even huffing it, they're just sitting in the car, and then like the evil alien wind blows in and they accidentally knock off like the tube of the nitrous tank which fills the car with nitrous, and then they discover that that is what ultimately kills the aliens. So it's like a 100,000 times more fun, like funnier version of like Signs, when it's like, oh, water kills the aliens.
Yes. Yeah. If we've confused anybody at home, I know that we said that the movie's about an evil, invisible alien force that turns locals into zombies. But maybe we should say that also that this invisible force, when it shows up, acts like the wind.
Yeah.
So it blows by people and it affects them. So yeah, the nitrous neutralizes this invisible alien wind or whatever.
It's essentially just like a cosmic fart that enters your lungs,
Yes.
and then it takes over your whole body and it makes you vomit and shit out all the blood that's in your body, and then now the little alien lives inside of you and is just there for the ride. I just wanted to paint a picture. I'm sorry.
Cosmic cosmic fart. That is a picture painted for sure. Um, but you said a while ago, and we're talking about the nitrous and the cosmic fart. So you said a while ago about this being a very, like, even though it's not a good movie, that it was, I guess, well planned and when well structured. I what did I say? I think it was last episode. I can't remember if it was last. I'm pretty sure it was last episode where I said that one of the great rules of filmmaking is setup and payoff.
Right.
And this is some goofy ass shoestring budget made in a backyard of Texas movie. And goddamn if they didn't do some fucking perfect setup and payoff. I mean,
Yes.
they set up this nitrous huffing like probably 12 minutes into the movie,
Mhm.
and it pays off in the last 15 minutes of the movie when we learn that this is what kills the zombies. And fuck yeah, man.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Set up,
They
payoff.
yeah, that's a perfect payoff for me because when it happens, I feel like there's so many things that when you're watching this movie, it just surprises you for better or for worse, honestly. But there's just so many moments where you're like, "Wait, what the hell? What?" And that was one of the first ones for me where I was like, she's got nitrous in her car, like that. Also, that's just so old school. Like, I'm sure there could probably, if anybody under the age of 30 happens to be listening, I don't even know if the kids still do nitrous. They've like moved on to
Drop us
some
a comment
designer
below.
drug.
Do
Yeah,
you
let us
guys do
know.
nitrous?
No, don't let us know.
Oh my
Don't
god.
ever tell us any incriminating information, please.
You can tell me, just message me on Facebook. It's facebook.com/mcloud9 or something like that. I don't know what my
Oh
URL is,
man, good
whatever.
luck.
Um, so tell me what you thought of, another main character who I every fucking moment this guy was on screen, I was laughing or at least grinning, and that is, Dennis Letts as the character of General Sanders. Not Colonel Sanders, but General Sanders of the US Army.
I love General Sanders so much. He is so hilarious. Like he he's just such a this isn't a complaint. He is a very one-dimensional character, but in the funniest possible way. Like he is literally just like a bullheaded military general who all he wants to do is drop the bomb. He just wants to drop that nuke so bad, and that is like all he can think about. And I just love that because like you have this great, we haven't talked about the scientist yet, but we'll get to it. But like you just have this great like trio of like main guy and girl trying to run away from zombies, scientists trying to study zombie aliens, and then the military just wants to nuke it. They just want to blow it up. So yeah, everything he said was
I love his
amazing.
character so much.
And I really liked
He
I
was,
oh, I was just going to say this is his freaking debut film. Like his first one of his first things.
who he went on to, be in Castaway.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I digress. So his character, General Sanders, we brought up how this is, the birthday of the late great Arlie Ermy, and I feel like he is playing like a Looney Tunes cartoon caricature version of Arlie Ermy from like Full Metal Jacket. Like he's
Yeah.
just like that redneck gruff. I'm gonna chew nails and spit them out and drop the bomb, you know, motherfucker. And I love it because he's so over the top and goofy as shit, and he really gives off that like tough Texas badass, burly badass, and he is so great on screen, and I ate it up. I ate it up, and it's funny, like watching this movie. I didn't think about it before, but the parallels between this movie and another like fucking fan favorite zombie film that came out just a year later with Return of the Living Dead. With you've got your zombies running amok in the town, people trying to figure it out, and the military gets called in, and they want to fucking the army general that wants to fucking drop a nuke. I thought that was kind of weird. That kind of a parallel there. I'm not trying to say Return of the Living Dead ripped it off by any means, but it just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I've seen that mentioned online as well. Just like I think it's one of those things. Um there's just some like plot points that sometimes people just think of similar ideas like around the same time. But that is really interesting that it's like a year later this huge movie that like most people who are into horror have at least heard of um did something kind of similar there.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk about Robert Brading as Uncle Joe. I loved Uncle Joe. What did you think?
Uncle Uncle Joe is so funny. Yeah, he's definitely he's really fun. I mean, he doesn't really do a whole lot for me pre turning into a bloodsucker. Like he's pretty funny in like a basic way that like most characters are in this movie to me. He's got some pretty funny lines though. But I
Oh, the
just
best.
his whole scene where he's turned into a bloodsucker and he does a kung fu fight with Jeff, and then Jeff takes a chainsaw and cuts his arm off, and then he just goes like, "You cut my fucking arm off." And there's this like incredible
Yeah.
pause between the arm being cut off and they just stand there for a second, and then that's all he said. Like it's a the perfect line delivery in my opinion.
And the best part about it is, like, this is, like, quintessential, like, farmer redneck guy. Like, he's, like, got the bib overalls and the flannel shirt, and he's just, like, straight up farmer redneck, and now he's a zombie, and there's a kung fu scene. You you you
Like
can't
what
say
the
this is not
fuck?
fucking amazing. Um, I was thinking today, if I was given the keys to the kingdom of bloodsuckers from outer space and told, "Go make a remake," I thought to myself, who would I cast Joe Bob Briggs as? Would Joe Bob Briggs be Uncle Joe, or would Joe Bob Briggs be General Sanders? Because
Ooh.
I was laughing the whole time picturing him as either one of those fucking characters, because it would, again, it would be kind of perfect. Movie was made in Texas originally. It premiered at his drive-in festival originally, so it would be full circle. But I saw a little bit of Joe Bob in each of those characters.
Yeah, I could totally see Joe Bob, especially as Uncle Joe. Like that just would be a perfect fit. But I don't know. I
Yeah,
feel like it. I don't know if I've ever. It's hard to picture Joe Bob like wearing like a military uniform. So that in itself would be pretty funny, especially if he like. Can you just imagine if he insisted on keeping the cowboy hat? So he's like a general in a cowboy hat with a bolo. I would love that. I do think this movie like could easily be remade. Well, I don't want to say easily. It would have to be like lovingly and delicately remade because otherwise it would just it you run the risk of completely just like missing the point of the first one or just missing what made the first one
right.
like special. Um but I do think it could be cool to see like this movie made with maybe a stronger budget and better technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to throw out also something else that I gut bust laugh. I laughed through this entire fucking movie. But you got Uncle Joe, but then you've got Aunt Kate,
Oh, I
and
love
they
her.
both get turned into bloodsuckers. And I love how after they chop off his arm, whatever, and Jeff and Julie go to run away. Like as they run, she just is standing there beside Uncle Joe, and she just like slightly just waves goodbye as they're running away. And something about that, just like nonchalant wave she gives, I just fucking gut bust every
She
time.
she has one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, and it's just everything she says even before she's turned into a bloodsucker is very like monotone and like deadpan, but then she does become a bloodsucker and
Yeah.
she walks up to Julie like while the two other guys are like kung fu fighting, and she goes, "I've got a recipe for spaghetti I know you'll love." And just something about the way she said it, it's just so funny. Like it's a, she's also not the best actor, but it doesn't matter at all because that is just
No, she's
hilarious.
terrible. She's terrible. Oh my god. I again, like I'm gonna try not to say it too awful. Like I would spend all night talking about each and every one of these characters in detail, just because again how much I just genuinely love this movie.
Hmm.
And I keep getting tickled just thinking about it. But let's move on. Not a big part, but I thought it was fucking hilarious. Paul Paulson, who was a decent famous comedian in his time, playing the president of the United States. I loved the typical stereotypical, I should say, president with the hot piece of ass sitting on his lap
I
as he's
love
on the
it.
phone with General Sanders about dropping the bomb.
Yeah, and he's just like, "Yeah, you know what? If you can drop the bomb if you'll just stop calling me." And that to me is such a funny, like,
Yeah.
even if they aren't trying to make some grand political statement, I still love the humor in that of just like a politician not wanting to do their job.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, he was very funny. That could have been a bigger bit even, I think. But I'm happy with what we got.
All right, so I know you said earlier something about talking about the scientists and stuff. I wanted to kind of work our way to them last
Okay.
because they are part of Research City, which I also fucking laugh at
I
because
love
you
that.
got these scientists that's working in a place called Research City, and it's embroidered in on the back of their lab coats.
I need a Research City t-shirt. I don't know if they exist, but I need one. Like embroidered.
So we need pronto. We need a Shapeshifters Part 8 T-shirt with a Research City lab coat.
Yes. Oh my god, absolutely. Yeah.
Make it happen. Make it so.
Okay, I'll get on that.
So tell me what you thought about our fellows at Research City. Who one of the scientists, who was supposed to be, I guess, Jeff's brother, that was played by our writer director Glenn Coburn.
Mhm. Yeah, I really like the scientists. They're one of the funnier parts to me. Something about I didn't realize until I was watching the making of doc that one of those scientists is Glenn Coburn, but he actually was one of my favorites
Hmm.
because the whole time he's just super I can't quite remember any of his lines except for he does have one where he's like there's like damn that incidental music's scary. He breaks the fourth wall and
Yeah,
references the music that's being played. So like everything about him he seems so like laid back and casual, and it's like not really believable that he would be a scientist, but it's amazing.
none of them.
And
Yeah.
honestly, not maybe the girl, the lady like convinces me the most, but that's probably just because she has a sophisticated British, maybe Australian accent. I couldn't quite tell. It felt like it kind of went both ways sometimes. But I really liked her. I thought she had a really great look. I like her big glasses and her curly hair. um and then I feel bad because I can't remember the name of the third one, the other guy. They as a trio are just really funny to me, and I love that. So they've got I believe his name's Dr. Pace in the movie. They've got like their like head doctor.
Hmm.
He's been infected by the bloodsuckers. They've got him strapped to a table and are just doing experiments on him. And then while he's still strapped up on the table, they're just like, "Man, it's been really stressful. Like, let's go get wasted." And they just leave and go get hammered,
Yeah.
and it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm like you. I love all of the scientist stuff and all those scenes because they're all 100% just fucking legit hilarious. However, like I said, when I first watched this in the theater at the Alamo, like I said, I laughed like a fucking buffoon out loud. Like people were probably just like, "This fucking guy needs to shut up." But you know what made me laugh the most?
What?
And it was during these scientist scenes. It wasn't the scientists themselves. It was none other than the fucking custodian.
I love
My
him
God.
so much. That guy, too many weirdos. Too many damn weirdos.
Fucking something weird going on here. Oh my God.
That guy is
There's
so
something
funny.
weird going on. That's awful weird. These weirdos around here being weird. Oh my God, dude. I every time that motherfucker said weird, I just fucking died laughing more and more and more. Like if you took a shot for every time he said weird or weirdo, you'd be fucking dead.
Yeah, and like I love that he just never, and to me that also is pretty accurate of like a specific brand of like old southern man, where it's like they're not a man, not men of many words. Like he's not going to elaborate what the hell he means by too many weirdos, but he's just going to blame everything wrong with the world on, I tell you what's wrong with society these days, too many dang weirdos.
And what's the line? He says, the problem is weirdos and weirdos mating and having more weirdos or
Yes.
something like that. And I swear to God.
I love that so much.
And you know what's funny is like you and me are just talking about this shit, just like nobody knows actually what technically what the fuck we're even talking about. And all I can say is you've got to fucking see it for yourself.
You
Us
really
even
do.
trying to explain it will not do it justice in the
Yeah.
least.
It's only like an hour and 20 minutes. Like it's not very long at all. It's just a goofy fun time and it's worth it's worth watching at least once if any of this sounds even remotely appealing or funny to you.
Can we please for a minute talk about the amazing fucking theme song of this
Oh
movie?
my god, yes. I'm so glad you remembered. Yes. That theme song is great. Like how many movies with a total just like nothing budget can say that they actually have their own original theme song? Like there's an awesome song throughout this movie.
That's just a fucking thumping like new wave rock song, and it plays like the bass line and riff plays throughout most of the movie, but the actual song plays a couple times too. But it plays in the opening and it plays at the ending, and that fucking song is so so goddamn catchy. Like I want a CD,
Yeah,
which I don't.
I really love it.
I can't believe I just said I want a CD because people don't even listen to CDs anymore. But I want a CD. I want a CD that has two songs on it. This Bloodsuckers from Outer Space song and Howling by Babel from Howling 2. And I just want those two
Yes, I
songs.
was hoping that's what you would say.
I want those two songs to play on constant repeat. So fucking good.
Oh my god. I was just gonna say if you had like if it was a record instead and you'd have a B side, the B side should be the song that they play at the rap party in Howling 3, which is a song called My Name is a Holy Word. And that song's a bop. Like that song's so good. So yeah, I you should put that one on there. But I will say that's the only song out of the three that you can actually still find on Spotify and shit. Whereas the other ones, you gotta search the depths of the internet to find it.
You mean to tell me the fucking rap party song from Howling 3 is on Spotify?
It's on Spotify because it was like an actual like pop song. Like I don't really know the history behind it because I didn't research it, but I just was like, wait, this is a real song. I remember like during that scene when I was watching Howling 3 being like, this song's kind of cool. Like that's cool. Like I'm
Was it like a
surprised. And then I
was it like
looked
a
it up and it's a real song.
it was like a Australian like pop song or some shit or what?
I guess I don't know honestly. But it was apparently a real enough song that it wasn't made for the movie as far as I know.
Great. Well, folks, so you heard it here. We need Bloodsuckers from Outer Space and a double whammy of Howling 2 and Howling 3. Somebody make that shit happen. But yes, Bloodsuckers from Outer
Yeah.
Space, the song itself is fucking worth the price of admission. Tell me, so again, I've watched this 3 times now, and fuck, man, I literally own the same copy that you just got, the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray. However, I'm a lazy piece of shit. I have not watched any of the behind the scenes or making of featurettes, which I need to get on. Um, but you did, so I'm gonna let this segment be mostly you talking because I don't know anything about the behind the scenes stuff. My knowledge is out the door at this point. I've already kind of given my 2 cents. So, Katie, why don't you go ahead and tell me and the folks listening at home a little bit about the movie behind the scenes and the filmmakers that brought this hilarious fucking movie to life.
Yeah. Okay, so as I was mentioning before when I was talking about the actors, a lot of like the names of these people are not readily available online. And while I was taking some light notes while I was watching the documentary, I was not smart enough to write down everybody's names as they were being interviewed. So there are some people that I am not I'm only going to refer to them by their title, like their role on the set. But I don't want anyone to think that I'm like trying to, ignore or blow off a specific person. Like I think everybody in this movie deserves to be applauded for various reasons. So I just wanted to preface it with that. I might not know all the names, but I'll at least tell you what I do know. So yeah, I kind of briefly mentioned it earlier. It sounds like Glenn Coburn graduated film school. He had a small group of friends that he'd, done a lot of stuff with in school, and he really wanted to make a movie, so he was like, "Fuck it, let's make a movie." And as far as like how they got the quote unquote budget or anything like that, all that is a little fuzzy. Like I'm fairly certain it was almost entirely like self-funded by like their own money that they had. Like I don't believe there was technically a producer, but not in the sense of like somebody was funding this movie for them. So it had a
Right.
totally shoestring budget, and I think I'll get to the my corny feelings about it after I kind of explain some of the technical stuff. So they didn't really have a budget, and they didn't really have a crew. Like they had a decent sized crew, but it everybody was kind of varying in how much experience they had. So there were some people who, were pretty
I
semi-professional,
know
or
that feeling.
yeah, I know. It had, at least had been on set before. And then there were some people who just were completely, totally green to this experience. So, you know, according to the people that were interviewed for the documentary, everybody, it seemed to be a really positive experience for everybody. So there were like the old timers, like the people who were experienced, they were teaching the newbies things. So like people were actually like learning stuff throughout this process and like just having a good time with each other. They had to shoot on weekends to accommodate people's day job schedules. I know that that life also. Um,
I know that life too well.
Yeah, and I think the thing that stands out the most to me, and I don't know if you noticed, but almost every single shot in this movie is a locked shot. It's like a still, not a still, but it's like the camera stays in one
Yeah.
spot. And I didn't super notice it while I was watching it, but basically because of the low budget, they didn't have a person, like they couldn't find like a camera assistant basically. So that's at least what they were saying. I have a feeling it also had to do with the fact that there were a lot of inexperienced actors who weren't used to, because acting on stage is very different than acting for a camera. You have to like hit your mark and do all this other shit. Like you have to be able to move around without leaving the shot basically. So I think because they were
Right.
between them not having a camera assistant and not having like experienced on camera actors, they decided to just lock everything off, and every single shot would just be like on a tripod basically. Like I don't even think they panned. Like the most intense shot in this movie is at the very beginning, where they did manage to get like a cherry picker, where it's like the camera's descending down into the fog, which I think that whole sequence with the farmer at the beginning like puking up blood is one of the coolest things.
Great opening.
That's one of my favorite parts of this movie. So anyway, so they did the movie, and there's honestly a whole, like, not a whole lot to exactly like the technical things that went into this movie. They kind of just like did what they could, shot it when they could. But everybody had a blast. Like everybody was having such a great time. Everybody got along. I didn't hear any stories of like tension or drama. It's like we go from talking about a movie like Popcorn, where it was just a disaster and everybody like was fighting and it was this huge thing, and you have this movie with that where it's like totally low budget, they had no money, they had a really tight schedule. You'd think they'd be super stressed out and like taking it out on each other, but they actually like treated it like it was a big party and just had a great time. So much so that during the wrap party, the cops showed up and crashed it, and then they just went to somebody else's house and just kept partying. So I think,
That's great.
I, I
That's so
I
great.
love that so much. And as I was watching it, I just couldn't help but be reminded of the times from way back when I used to drive 4 hours up to where you live to come hang out on movie sets with you and a few of those other people in the area. And it everything, the whole way that they described that experience of working on Bloodsuckers was very familiar to me, and that's really what made me love this movie, is because it
Right.
reminded me of like my own experiences of like the first few times I've ever got to be on a set, and how it just like basically changed like the whole trajectory of my life in a lot of ways. And so I just really appreciate that, that this movie they had a similar experience. Like I'm so tired of hearing behind the scenes stories of some of like my favorite movies of all time. Uh, and then you just find out that everyone's being a huge asshole to each other. Like people are just like blowing up at each other and yelling, and directors ruling
Yeah.
their set with an iron fist and like abusing and harassing everyone around them. I'm just so tired of hearing about asshole filmmakers. And it was just nice, and not just directors, I mean, and anybody on the set. So it's just really refreshing
Right,
to
right.
hear that it was a pretty universal, like, positive experience for everyone. So I really appreciated that.
That's awesome. And I don't want to like us doing the show because you and I've known each other for so long, and and you've worked on a lot of projects with me and stuff. And like one thing I never want to do is like really like talk too much about my stuff. I mean, if people listening to this show didn't even know I was a filmmaker, I wouldn't care about that. But
Yeah.
you bring this up, and like I'm gonna drop the veil just ever so slightly. Since you brought up all this stuff, and like go back to the fact that if you do know me, you might not know. Like the only people that truly know this is like you and uh like my super close friends, like my family. But recently in the past like five, well, probably about 4 years, I kind of like just stopped making movies, and I just kind of put a halt on things. And I don't want to really get into too much of the reason why, but part of it is because when I started making movies at a fairly young age, I have always done movies my way. And while that might sound a little bit like egotistical, I don't mean it that way. What I mean by making my own way is I want to have fun, and I want my crew to have fun, and I want my cast to have fun, and I want us to have fun making what we're making. And for years now, or from like 2005 until like 2012, 2013, I had fun making movies. It was a blast. And it got so to where the cast that I worked with and the crew that I worked with were like an extended family. Because you guys would come over. Hell, I remember us wrapping filming for the day and going back to my mom's house and sitting on the couch drinking beer, and we rented the first VHS movie and getting
Yes.
creeped the fuck out, and just having such a good time. It was like a fucking sleepover, and I had so much fun making movies like that. And you know what? A lot of the projects that I did in those days, while yes, they suffered from budgetary restraints, and of course, it suffered from a lot of green behind the scenes. Those movies, you can still say they were fun to make. They've got a charm about them, and you know what? Those movies, they were released by distributors, and those movies were top sellers.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll always cherish my early movies for being that, because I loved everybody that I worked with. It was fun making the movies, and it was just a good time. But you know what? The reason why I've steadily gotten out of movies for a while is because the more I made movies with a bigger crew and a bigger cast and more money and a bigger budget, is I started working with assholes, and I started working with people who want to butt heads, and I started working with people who want to make demands, and I worked with people who wanted to like strike arguments with me over, because I'm like the most easiest to get along with person you will ever fucking meet.
Yeah.
Like if you make me mad, it's a different story. But like I don't want to say like I'm the friendliest motherfucker in the world, but I kind of feel like sometimes I am. Like I am so easy to get along with. But my thing is like if you are creating some kind of animosity towards me on set in front of people, something's not right. It's not professional. And I started realizing that these people, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not afraid to point things out. This I worked on the movie Bloody Ballet. It's got many other fucking titles, I think, but that movie basically like destructed me as a filmmaker, because it was the first film where I came in as an outsider into a different niche group
Mhm.
of of other crew members that I didn't necessarily know, and they all had a completely different mindset than I did. These guys were fucking film school people, and commercial people and stuff like that, and I'm just a fucking good old boy from the sticks of Virginia who is used to shoestring budgets, shooting shit on the weekends, crawling through the dirt and mud, crawling under fucking barbed wire fence if I have to get the goddamn shot. And that's just the background I came from, and I like was thrust into this world. It was the most terrible experience I've ever had, and it was that moment of where, and I promise this is going somewhere. It was that moment of like, is this the life that I wanted?
Mhm.
Because it's so easy to be a film fan and love movies and want to make movies. It's one thing to say I want to make movies, but it's another thing to actually make movies and to make movies the way you want to make them. And sometimes, you know what, folks? If you want to make movies and you want to make them your way, that is great. I can promise you, though, that 9 times out of 10, the way you want to make those movies is going to be deemed not the right way. But I say, fuck that. Fuck the naysayers. Have fun. Well, like Katie said, we talked about this earlier in other episodes, but have fun making what you want to make. Fuck what somebody from a film school says. Fuck what anybody else like looks down their nose at you and says. Surround yourself with like-minded people. Surround yourself with friends that are not out to like stab you in the back. Have fun, and you know what? Who cares if your fucking your boom operator has never held a fucking mic before? Fucking do it, man. Tape a microphone to a broomstick. Have fun. I don't give a shit if you're 40 years old and you're still making movies that way. Do it, because I promise you, in the long run, it pays off. And even if that movie never gets sold and you don't make a dime off of it, if you can look back and be like, God damn, that was fun, that is when it's worth it. Sorry for this huge long
No.
PSA, but I just wanted to relate that, fuck the again, like you said, every time you turn around now, it's always people having a terrible experience on movie sets, and that is the most uncalled for bullshit, because filmmaking is a gateway. I don't want to say like a gateway drug, but it kind of is. But it's a way for you to step away from the real world and to have fun. And it sucks knowing that these movies that are supposed to make you feel that way are not made that way.
Yeah,
So that's
I
why a lot of people keep coming to me and they're like, "Oh, go ahead."
Oh, no, 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 I wanna hear what you had to say.
A lot of people come to me and they're like, "Well, why aren't you like working on stuff like right now? Why are I know you've been working on like some really super low budget stuff. Why aren't you doing like big stuff again?" I'm just like, "Because I don't fucking want to, man." Like the
Yeah.
the last movie I just worked on, like fucking like treated me like that was like the worst experience ever. Why would I want to keep doing that? Like if I can make stuff that I want to make on like a fucking $100 budget with my own equipment, and I don't have to deal with that, then I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah, like I agree with everything you said. Like I think, you know, it's great if you want to go to film school, if you can afford it, if you want to get that like formal technical education, that's great. And there's nothing against anybody who's done that, but I feel like sometimes there is this weird like divide between like people who think they know the right way to do art and they look down on anyone. It's like gatekeeping of like, oh, you're not allowed, like you didn't study this, you're not a professional, you don't have all this best equipment and money and actors and
Right.
shit, so like what gives you the right to do it? And so I think, yeah, so like I'm totally with you on that. And I just wanted to say, like, as far as like on-set experience goes, like these things like stick with people for a really long time. Like you hear stories about like a bad on-set
Yeah.
experience that people like 10, 20, 30 years later are still like hesitant to even talk about because it's upsetting. Whereas like I have a very distinct memory of, working on a project with you, and we spent the whole weekend with a whole group of people up at this house that you like rented out, and we made made the thing, and then I remember fucking crying as I was like driving away that day cuz it felt like we were at like summer camp, and it was just like this amazing group of people that all just like got along and was super friendly, and we just had a great time just like quoting movies and shooting the shit. And I think that experience is way more valuable than like a blockbuster like than saying that you like produced like the hottest new movie, or like the like even if your movie doesn't come out or doesn't get finished, like people will remember that experience of just doing it. So this is all just a very long-winded way to say that I am glad that Bloodsuckers from Outer Space was a positive experience for everyone that was in it, because that to me matters so much more than making like a technically perfect movie. Like there's plenty of room for the auteurs out there to like make the super perfect movie, but I think like you said, like if you even have remotely an inclination to do it, you can fucking get a lens for your iPhone for like $150, and you can get an app. I don't even remember the name of it. There's some like film editing or filmmaking app that's like only like $20. So you've spent like $170 and you can make a movie with just your smartphone. So you just have
Right.
to really, I mean, it definitely is a lot of work and a lot of time, and it can be stressful. But I think if you're always remembering, like, we want to have fun and make that be like the focal point, then everybody's going to have a good time. Like, that's very important to me.
Absolutely. Well, that was sentimental as
It
fuck.
was. We really went down that corner. I was wondering how many episodes we'd get into before we started waxing poetic about old memory lane. And I guess we made it to 6 episodes.
Hey, you know what? It had to happen. I'm glad it happened. Again, because I'm not saying that I'm hanging up my baseball cap when it comes to filmmaking, because I will continue, making movies. But it goes back to, like I said, the types of movies I'm a fan of. Your Bloodsuckers from Outer Space, The Video Dead, The Dead Next Door, Flesh Eater from like '88. Like these movies that, again, they have this hometown aesthetic. They and when I think I said earlier, they just feel real, and I don't mean like they feel realistic, but they just feel like, I don't want to say like gritty, but it just feels like, I don't know, like it just feels real life, and it's like got that fun. You know what? The best word is homemade,
Yeah,
and I love that aesthetic. I love that feeling, and those are the types of movies that really get me. And again, I've said this before. I love Hereditary. I love the remake of Suspiria. I love these super stylized, well fucking made horror movies. Like I eat that
same.
shit with a spoon. Love it. But I mean, again, like this movie, I will love just as much, sometimes if not more, and that's the kind of shit that I want to do. Because again, I'm too old for assholes. I'm too old for bullshit. I want to have fun, and I want to watch something fun. And I think that, like, a lot of people have said this before, but I'm just going to reiterate: uh, make the shit that you want to see.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's what they did with this movie. They made a hilarious fucking tongue in cheek zombie movie, and it was exactly the movie they set out to make, and that's what we got.
yeah. I hope that it seems from the documentary that I watched that they all seem to look back on it with pride. Like even the ones, there were a few people that they interviewed, like cast and crew, who straight up were like, "Oh yeah, the acting's really bad," or like, "Oh, this movie's not that good." But like they didn't, they still only had positive things to say. Like they still were like proud of the fact that it had endured all of this time. Like Dennis Letts, yeah, that guy, he said in an interview that, so he had, at the time of them interviewing him, he was still doing like stage acting and stuff, and he says that even to this
Mhm.
day, when he lists in his like actor bio, like in the pamphlet they give out before the play starts, he lists Bloodsuckers first, like every time. So I just love that.
God rest his soul, Dennis Letts.
Seriously,
God rest
RIP.
his soul. Yeah, and it's funny because, like, again, like he went on to I think he's like the only one in that cast that really went on to be and a lot of stuff. And again, he was in Castaway, so the
Yeah.
Tom Hanks flick. So good on them. Love it. And again, Dennis Letts was, I loved him as General Sanders.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
just want to break the sentimentality really quick and just say a fun fact about Dennis Letts is that his wife is an author, and he went on to have a part. I don't remember exactly who he plays, but he's in this movie with Natalie Portman called Where the Heart Is, where Natalie Portman gives birth in a Walmart. That's all you need to know about the movie. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
movie was written by based on a book written by his wife.
I remember that movie. I vaguely remember seeing it. But yeah, I remember that because she's like lives in like the like a tent and like the sporting goods area
Yep.
and lives off the food. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, yep, yep. So yeah, his
I'll be
Dennis
damned.
Letz's wife wrote that. So I just thought that was fun. But yeah.
That is fun. All right, Katie. Well, we've talked about the movie, we've talked about the actors, we've waxed poetic about our own experiences of making fun low budget films. Let's bounce over to the actual bloodsuckers from outer space themselves. Let's talk a little bit about the makeup and effects of the movie.
Yeah, so the only info I could find as far as like who did what is it says makeup effects were done by Dan Gallion, which I am not sure if he went on to do other things. But
No,
maybe okay, so
not a
no.
thing.
Okay, well either way, I would say
But you,
I really like I like the aesthetic of these zombies. Like their skin is like blue or like grayish blue, and they've got this big like comically large, probably anatomically incorrect, like
uh-huh,
blue vein that goes across their face, and like around, like all over their
uh-huh.
body. And I think that looked really cool. The some of the blood, even I don't know, I even like the blood when it didn't look good, if that makes sense. Like at the beginning, when the old guy is like puking up blood, it just looks like fruit punch, honestly. but but something about it,
Right.
he sells it, man. Like it's pretty gross. And then the only like little fun tidbit I have as far as like special effects go is that the scene where Uncle Joe gets his arm cut off by the chainsaw, they had to, so they basically like made the actor tie his arm behind himself, so he had to sit with his arm tied behind himself for like hours. They put like this fake like sleeve arm on him, and then they literally went to the deli and got like a hunk of meat with the bone still in it, so that way when you cut into it you'd see some of the bone. And then they
The boat.
fucking duct taped it together. They like duct taped this like section of the sleeve together so that that would be the part where the chainsaw would cut it. And they only had one take to do it, and they nailed it. So I just love that. If you're
That's
it,
awesome.
if anyone is at all interested in how they did that, or you want to know how you could do that yourself if you're trying to make movies with no money, there is a little like, I think there's like a 5 to 10 minute tutorial on the Blu-ray, the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray, where they tell you how to recreate that basically.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I love that they did that, and, that just it goes back to the whole, homemade aesthetic. Something else I love about these types of movies is the down and dirty guerrilla filmmaking, homemade backyard effects of these types of movies, because you've probably heard me say this a bunch of times, like, in person. Um, Sometimes, like, effects in movies, even though sometimes the effects are cheesy or unrealistic, is sometimes a better payoff, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And like for instance, like you talked earlier about the blood and how sometimes when the blood doesn't look real, it's sometimes a little bit grosser. And like that, like so, like the original Dawn of the Dead. Okay, so the original 78/79 Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Like the fucking blood in that movie looks like bright fire engine red paint. Like it's so
Yeah.
like opaque and like does not look like real blood, but something about it is so goddamn gross.
Mhm.
And I love any horror movie where the effects it's not on par with like realism, but it's done in such a grotesque way that it still grosses you out. Like, if you showed me, like, a paper mache head filled with fake blood getting its eye gouged out, like, I'm going to love that more than probably, like, a well-sculpted, head that was cast from silicone with bladder effects. You know what I'm saying? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like, I don't know what it is about that cheesy, obviously handmade in a basement, fake prosthetic stuff that I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something endearing about it no matter what, and I think I've probably already said this in another episode, but I'm gonna say it a billion more times, which is that I would much rather see some like super low budget, like a hunk of deli meat with a bone in it that they duct tape together and put fake blood in. Like I'd rather see that than any amount of CG blood. I understand why on bigger budgets, there's time constraints, maybe there's budget constraints. It's just quicker and easier to do it in post and do the blood. So I don't want to hate too much on it. I understand, but there will always be something to practical effects because even if they're bad, they're still tactile. They look like they're a part of the world that they're in. So sometimes CG, just like
Right.
even the best CG, there's this uncanny valley thing where like our brains know that that's not real. They know that that wasn't there when they shot it. So it takes me out of it. So yeah, I would much rather have any amount of practical effects, even if it's not the best.
Yeah, I have to say overall, I love the effects in this movie. It's a shame that the people behind the effects probably didn't go on to do more things because I think even though the effects weren't like jaw dropping amazing by any means, I think these people probably had could have had a decent career in the '80s had they maybe continued and learned the craft a little bit more and kept doing it.
Mhm.
But you know what? They didn't. God love them for what they did give us. I loved it. I loved the big chunky blue veins on the zombies. The blue gray skin, like grease paint look to them was again very reminiscent of Dawn of the Dead. So yeah, I loved it. I loved the blood and you know what? Before we move on, I do want to cap the effects off with the goddamn decapitation.
Yeah.
So when Jeff takes the chainsaw and decapitates Uncle Joe with the chainsaw. As he runs off, we see Uncle Joe's headless body still standing and just like wobbling back and forth, his blood just shooting out of the neck. And that it took me on my third watch to finally kind of see the fakeness because the first time I watched it was on the big screen at the Alamo and I was probably like 5 beers in. And I was like, God damn, that actually looks really good. How'd they do that? And then when I watched it back in October, I was also probably like 5 or 6 beers in. Um, and I was still like, that looks amazing. And so I watched it today, and I hadn't started drinking yet. And I was like, all right, I can kind of see, I can tell it's the fake body, but it is still so well done, and it's a really well done decapitation. So I tip my hat to those guys. I dug the effects and the chainsaw decapitation. That gets 4 stars for me just on that alone.
Yeah, I really like the effects, and yeah, the decapitation scene is just gnarly. And then quickly, just like just as far as like concepts go, I really like the idea of these bloodsuckers. Like when I first got the movie and I saw the cover, I was like, okay, so it's just another zombie movie. And if you're listening to this, you might also think that we're just describing like your average zombie movie. But they take this sci-fi angle of it. That's why I mentioned Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because these zombies are still sentient. It's not like they turn into mindless, blood-sucking beasts.
Right.
They literally are like taken over by these aliens, and similar to Invasions of the Body Snatchers and many other sci-fi movies, all they want to do is assimilate more people into their community. And that in itself is really creepy. And it something about zombies being able to like talk while also like attacking you and ripping you to shreds and being vicious monsters is really terrifying. But I do think it's really
Yeah.
funny that like it I correct me if I'm wrong because you just watched this today and it's been a few days for me. But at the end, oh right, they blow up the wrong town, and then they show the town, and the zombies, the
Yes.
bloodsuckers, just have taken over the town, and it's an entire functioning like society of just people who have been possessed by an alien fart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got the cute little old gas station man sitting there reading the newspaper. He's like, "It's a beautiful day, ain't it?" And they're all fucking zombies. It's great.
That is so funny. I really love that. Yeah, and I mean, I guess a little bit of a spoiler alert, but like it's just so funny that the general just wants to drop the bomb so bad and he finally gets the okay, and then they drop it like 60 miles in the wrong direction and blow up like a Baptist commune.
Yeah,
Like that's so
it's
good to me.
it, he literally says to the other guy, the army guy. He says, "I think the coordinates are a little off, but the nuke don't get them. The fallout will." And I fucking died laughing.
I love that so much. So yeah, just I think just the concept of these quote unquote zombies is really cool.
Well, we pretty much made it to the end here. So Katie, why don't we wrap things up and give me your final thoughts on Bloodsuckers from Outer Space?
I like this one. It's not it's hard. I'm really torn on it because it's like, or I'm not even that torn on it. It's just like weird to recommend this as like a good movie because like we've said before, like on a very technical level, it's like pretty like it's like low budge and the acting is kind of like meh. But I think if you're used to watching like a lot of newer movies or a lot of like bigger budget movies, there's this weird like internal reaction that you get when you turn on a movie like this where your immediate reaction is to be like, "Oh, that's not very good. Like I don't want to watch this." But trust me, if you just stick with it. Like I said, it's only like an hour and a half. I found that like once I was like 10, 15 minutes in, I was just down for the ride. I was like, "All right, I've accepted what this movie is and it's great." And I'm having a good time. So I think it's definitely worth a watch if you like movies like this and if you have an appreciation at all for like indie filmmaking and anything like that, then I highly recommend getting the Blu-ray and watching the making of documentary because it was just a delight to watch.
Awesome. And we of course we know that I'm going to full heartedly recommend this movie. And again, this is coming from somebody who doesn't like horror comedies. But this is coming from somebody who loves what I consider party movies. Like again, this movie paired with like The Dead Next Door, which is a movie we'll have to talk about on another episode. But again, it's so much goddamn fun. Like bring some friends over, like, safety with COVID and stuff. But get a bunch of friends together, crack open a bunch of beer, smoke a bowl or two, and I promise you, you're going to fucking laugh your ass off because again, like if a movie can break the fourth wall and make me belly laugh out loud in a fucking dark theater, which I'm against. Like those type of people usually piss me off, and I was that person. So if it can make me do that, then I got a feeling it will make you do that. I fully recommend Bloodsuckers from Outer Space. I just saw it 2 years ago, and it quickly shot up to like one of my top favorite movies. So yeah, I at least give it one shot. And that's my final thoughts on Bloodsuckers. Because again, I could keep talking about it, but that's it on my end.
Well, the only other thing that we need to hammer out is what's your rating on this as far as the TNA meter
All right. Well, it's got a little bit. It's got a little bit of nudity.
for like a
We didn't talk
second.
about this character, but well, the sheriff's deputy guy
Yeah.
is doing some kinky S&M shit with a chick under the covers, and we get to see her boobs when they get out of the bed and whatnot. So yeah, you're right. It's about a minute and 25 seconds worth of nudity. However, they're decent. So I would give this movie. I'm gonna give it a. Let's do a solid 4 out of 10 stars on the TNA meter.
That's
Actually, no, I
fair.
take that back. I take that back. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 stars. Three and a
Okay.
half
Well,
stars on the
okay.
TNA.
Thank you for clarifying. I'll give it a little
Well,
bit
yeah,
of an
I had to
honorable
clarify.
I'll give it a little bit of I'd like to just honorably mention shout out the fact that the filmmakers decided to shoot a pretty long, drawn out sex scene all from the outside of the house. And we just hear them yelling and breaking shit. And then when they cut back to them, and it's pretty long, like you're like, all right, like they're just gonna do the whole thing. And then when they
Yeah,
cut back to them, they've literally destroyed the whole house. And I thought that was so
the
funny.
house. Yeah, it's a great scene. Well, it's a hilarious scene because you it's all exterior shots and it's just like obnoxiously loud sex noises and it's hilarious. It's the most hilarious sex scene that you don't actually see.
Yep.
Well, I guess that's it for us. Any last words, Katie?
Nope, that's it for me. Just a reminder to check out the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray and check out the rest of their catalog. They've got some wild stuff on there.
Absolutely. Check out not only do check out the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray of Bloodsuckers from Outer Space, but definitely check them out online. They have an amazing selection of films, so go check them out. But other than that, that's all we have for this episode of Video Express. We want to thank our sponsor, Lunch Meat. Lunch Meat VHS is your number one destination for the appreciation, celebration, and preservation of VHS and video store culture. Check out their website at lunchmeatvhs.com and explore their store full of old school horror goodies on VHS, apparel, and much, much more. You can also follow them on Instagram at lunchmeatvhs.
Yeah, thank you, Lunch Meat. They're awesome. I've been following their social media for a little bit now since we started the show, and they post some pretty cool stuff. But I just wanted to thank everybody that listened tonight or today or whenever you're listening. I hope you had a good time listening to us blab away about this very silly but fun movie. If you want to catch us on social media, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and now Facebook on at Video Express Pod. So come by and say what's up.
Drop us a line if the kids say that anymore. But
I
yep,
don't know, probably.
come say hi, give us some recommendations. Come stop by the video store, rent a movie with us, and we'll talk about it. But until next time, just remember, please be kind, rewind, but most importantly, just be kind. I'm Matt,
And I'm Katie.
and we'll catch you kids on the next episode of Video Express.
Bye bye.